Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt, thank you for being here. Let's get into it. All everyone has been talking about in DC lately is Elon Musk and Doge. Now, you have said that you have been, quote, doging before it was cool, and launched your own version of Doge, a Doge commission in Oklahoma to cut spending costs. So you clearly support the mission of this initiative. But with thousands of federal employees now out of work, some of whom were doing critical work like wildfire prevention, researching infectious diseases, and discussions of shuttering entire agencies like Department of Ed, do you have any concerns about Doge going too far and eliminating parts of government that could negatively impact your residents? Do you have any concerns about collateral damage?
Well, first off, thanks so much for having me here. I applaud President Trump and Elon for looking at spending. So big picture, if you back up, we're right now spending $2 trillion over our income. That is unsustainable. And Congress has a tough job because I know there's a lot of great programs out there and there's a lot of great needs. But in my opinion, states already have balanced budgets. We have to look at our spending, right? So, for example, do you borrow, I'm going to ask everybody here, do you borrow $20,000 on your credit card at the end of the year to give to a humanitarian effort? Of course you don't. We give out of the abundance. So all of the spending that we're doing around the world, somebody should be looking at it. So I think that's the big picture that most people in America think our spending's out of control. It's driving inflation up. When I say Doge in Oklahoma, so about 40% of our dollars that come to our states come from the federal government. So if we're going to be cutting spending, if we're going to have a reduction of that federal dollars coming into Oklahoma, the states need to say and how that money's spent. So when I say that's what we want to do to make sure we're not cutting core services, so we want to tell Elon and Doge at the federal level, hey, here's how we can take a 10% reduction in Oklahoma from the federal side if that's what they're planning on doing. So states need to have an effort. The other thing I'll say about the federal spending, it's the states that are doing the education, the infrastructure, the health care. We're running our economies. And so the way that we look at it is the federal government, whatever agency, we would prefer more block grants. We would prefer more ability to spend the money the way that we think we can more efficiently than kind of wash through the federal bureaucracy.
I'd like to talk about the federal funding freeze. There have been reports of some farmers throughout the country not receiving USDA grants that they had come to rely upon for their operations. What have you been hearing from farmers in your state, and do you have any concerns that farmers could once again be caught in the crosshairs of Trump policies?
Here's the deal. Sure, farming is so critical. In Oklahoma, I think that's our number 2 or number 3 industry. But from a business perspective, we're going to figure it out, right? They'll figure out the rules of the game. Do we believe that we should be subsidizing every single thing? Is that important to the U.S., to the United States? Okay, maybe. But you have to look at the overall spending, and the balanced budget, I think, is the overall effort that we need to get to. It's been whatever, you guys know better than I do from the federal level, but maybe 30 years since they've actually passed a budget. It's just these continuing resolutions. And so I don't think our founding fathers even envisioned a time when Congress would not be doing their core function of how much should we be spending and negotiating those things. So farming is important, but so is apparently, all the stuff that USAID does and all the different things. And so when you move someone's cheese, everybody's going to be complaining about it. The president has a tough job, but in our opinion, the president has the right to look at this spending and say, is that really a core mission of the federal government, especially when we're having to borrow so much money to do it? And that's where I think people in Oklahoma and Middle America and they voted for President Trump because they want to look at things differently.
Let's talk energy. You have spearheaded a clean energy boom in Oklahoma, and in an interview just this week with Politico, you called for the Trump administration to honor the clean energy contracts signed by the Biden administration. I want to follow up on a point that you made to my colleague, which was you said that you intend to discuss Trump's calls to repeal IRA wind tax credits with Interior Secretary Doug Burgum. Have you had that conversation yet?
It sounds like you're putting some words in my mouth there. Basically, what I said is if a deal is a deal, if there's a supply chain issue and we're recruiting companies to Oklahoma or Texas or California or Florida, and they're moving here based on an agreement that was done, I think all of those folks should be grandfathered in. That's basically what I said. So, and then when you think about, that's basically what I said.
Have you discussed any concerns about those tax credits ending with or potential repeal of IRA funds with your Republican governors who also have benefited from clean energy and EV? Like, is there a future Republican governors win caucus?
Well, here's the deal. Oklahoma, we're like number 3 in the country in electricity generated by wind. We have the most affordable, reliable energy anywhere in the country, and it's because a lot to do with our clean burning natural gas, right? But we're not opposed to wind development. We're not opposed to solar development or hydrogen. We believe you need more of everything. If you think about AI and data centers and the need for electricity usage, you're going to need more generation. I think the problem that most Americans are why do we borrow trillions of dollars and pick this industry over this industry? So when you're picking winners and losers and you're incentivizing these industries, that's where we have a problem with it. Let's let the free market work. Let's let private industries innovate to meet the needs of Americans, because at the end of the day, as governor, the people I talk to in Oklahoma, they want to take their kids to piano lessons and soccer practice, and they've got to heat their homes, their businesses. We want affordable groceries when we go to the grocery store. And energy has a lot to do with that. The Biden administration, by banning, putting a pause on LNG exports, really that hurts our allies around the world more than anything, hurts our domestic producers. So you have to back up and think, what are we doing? We believe in a free market. And whether that's wind development or whether it's solar development or whether it's more natural gas, I think we have to get government out of the way and allow private business to meet the needs of Americans.
Moving to immigration, just last week you stopped a plan pushed by your state's top education official requiring that children reveal their immigration status when registering for school. That could be seen as a bit of a departure from your Republican colleagues in other states who have been very aggressive on immigration enforcement in this Trump era. Can you explain your decision making there?
Yeah, so to me it was common sense. I mean, I never ran for office. I was a businessman and decided to run and serve my state as governor, and fortunately won. But so most people in the political world don't want to touch this issue, right? It's like a hot potato. Let's not talk about immigration. But as with my research, I mean, they were talking about this, 50 years ago when Reagan was running for president. I mean, these issues have not gone away. What are we going to do on the immigration issue? And so, I just applaud President Trump for making sure that we're closing the southern border. We know who's coming into our country. I think he did that day one in office, and we have over 90% fewer interactions at the southern border than we did even a year ago. So I applaud that. But I thought that my state superintendent was being a little bit political on this issue and was going after some kids. And I'm like, listen, we're not going to attack 6, 7, 8-year-old kids asking for immigration status. That's not a public safety issue. So I put a stop to that, and we're going to educate kids in Oklahoma. There's a bigger issue that we're going to make sure that we know who's coming into our country. But I've been a proponent for, governors having more authority on workforce visas, right? It's common sense to me to match employers with employees, whether it's in engineering, construction, agriculture. If you want to chase the American dream, pay taxes, do what's right, be in the country, let's give them a contract to work. But let's make sure if you're not gonna work, if you're gonna break the law, we don't want you here. We're not gonna give people free services. We've got to know who's coming into our country. And so I think those are the common sense, the way I kind of look at the immigration issue. And I think most Americans agree with me on it.
I want to go back to that decision. Does this mean that you oppose the president's action allowing ICE agents to make arrests in schools and churches? Do you think that should not be touched?
Well, I don't think that's what he said. He just changed the rule. Biden said that was absolutely off limits. And so he changed that rule to say, no, nothing's off limits. If they're going after a bad guy in a school, it's not going to be kind of a safe haven, so to speak. So I think that's what he said. I don't believe the president is wanting to go after school kids. I think he wants to make a statement. We got to know who's coming in the country, and we're going to make sure we get the criminal element out of the country. We have people in prison in Oklahoma that have done some bad things that are illegals. And so we set up Operation Guardian to work with President Trump to say, hey, that shouldn't be footed by the Oklahoma taxpayers. And so we're going to be working with him on to getting the criminal activity out of our state.
Mm-hmm. Some context here about that state superintendent. They're rumored to be eyeing a run for governor, and you're termed out in 2026. Do you have any thoughts on who you think should be your successor?
No, the field, there's been, I think, 2 announcements so far. There's probably 2 or 3 other folks that are looking to run, but I'm keeping my eye on it, and I'll be coming out trying to promote the ones that I think will carry on the conservative, common sense, pro-business agenda that I've done for the last 6 years now.
Let's talk tariffs. Oklahoma could be negatively impacted by the tariffs on steel and aluminum from China. What are your plans to insulate your residents on that front? Is there anything that you can do?
Speaking of tariffs, I support the president. He, number one, using it as a negotiation tool. Number two, we have to get some of the critical supply chain closer to home. You think about critical minerals. Oklahoma has been a leader. We have more, mineral to magnet manufacturers. That critical mineral industry is so important to, the technology, whether it's chips, whether it's the magnets that go into cell phones or fighter jets. And so we need to get that supply chain closer to home. So if tariffs are a way to get that done, that'll be good. There's another huge billion-dollar company from overseas that are looking to come to the U.S., come into Oklahoma, and the tariffs actually will help them. There's obviously there's consequences either way, but as a general rule, the America First agenda, creating manufacturing and jobs here, I think somebody needs to look at that, and I think the president is doing a good job.
Great. Let's move on to abortion. A few years ago, you signed the most restrictive law on abortion in the country, which essentially bans all abortions, with an exception to save the life of the mother. Republican state lawmakers have since introduced bills in the last year or so to further restrict abortion. Is the abortion issue settled for you? It
really is. I mean, there's like 3,000 new bills filed in Oklahoma every year. I'm sure every state's the same. I'm like, how in the world can you come up with 3,000 new things to do every year? It's mind-boggling. But the abortion deal is no different. We believe in protecting life in Oklahoma, protecting the life of the mother and the child, being the most pro-family state in the country. But yeah, the issue's settled. We're not going to criminalize anything. There's tons of bills that are filed for people to get headlines, and that's how the legislature sometimes does it. But I doubt seriously that will get to my desk. But we'll be protecting moms in Oklahoma.
What's your stance on the Texas lawsuit against a New York doctor for prescribing abortion pills to Texas residents? Is that a legal strategy we could expect to see out of Oklahoma as well?
Well, I saw that, and states do need clarity. So states like Oklahoma, states like Texas that believe in protecting life. There's doctors in other states, like who's in charge of the care of that patient? If they're just sending prescriptions or sending medicine, are they really in charge of that? We do need clarity from the courts on what that looks like. Whether Oklahoma joins that, I don't know. I haven't spoken with our attorney general on that specific issue, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Great. We're here to recognize the importance of states' influence on the national policy conversation, and so much of what we've seen come out of the White House in the last month has already happened in the states. School vouchers, trans issues. What's a policy that you have pioneered in Oklahoma that you want to see a federal version of in the next few years?
Speaking of that, to us, it was pretty common sense. I think, maybe the first governor to say, listen, we're gonna protect our women's sports in Oklahoma. We're not gonna let boys play in girls' sports. And so I went to the White House, I think last week or the week before, when the president signed that executive order. We just think that's pretty common sense. We think we're in line with most Americans. We're not against anybody, but we do want to protect women's sports. But those are things, we've done in our state, and now they're being done with a Republican president. Specifically, I can't think of a policy that hasn't been done yet, but I'll get back with you.
Great. You're headed to the White House shortly after this event, actually. What message do you intend to share with the president?
Well, I don't know if I'll be talking to the president, but I'm having lunch with the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, and so we'll talk some ag issues, and we'll probably bring up some of these tariff issues that you've talked about. But she's a friend, and so I'll just ask her how her job's going and what we can do to be helpful in Oklahoma with our great cotton farmers, wheat farmers, soybean, cattle producers, that kind of stuff.
Great. All right. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.